Alrighty, folks, round two. So in this game, I'm playing against International Master Balaji Dagupati, who I think is actually, he might be a GM elect. I don't know for sure, but he already has his GM norms. He's been playing a lot of these norm events, and I've actually played him twice in April in back-to-back events. He won the first game as white, then I won the second game as black. So this is our third game in a row. And unfortunately, he had white this game, which is not a good omen. And I think he just needed the rating. And if I'm not mistaken, I think with this tournament, he ended up crossing 2,500 in like the live rating, which would satisfy the requirement for the GM title. I don't know for sure. That's kind of what he and the arbiters were saying. But anyway, I'm pretty sure he'll be a grandmaster soon, one way or another, because he's just very, very strong. And yeah, so this game, in our last game that he had white, we ended up playing the open Sicilian as well. And in this position, I went for the move a6, which is kind of like a hybrid system between the Taimanov Sicilian and the Khan Sicilian, that has like its own little quirks. In this game, I decided to go for my regular Taimanov, and he plays g3. So this is a line. This is a line I'm pretty familiar with. It's not really considered the most dangerous, but it was somewhat of a surprise for me. I played a6, bishop g2, and here I usually play like d6 and bishop d7. I think this is a very kind of classic setup. For this game, I decided to go with a different line that I'd been looking at, starting with knight f6. There's lots of different ways for black to go here, like d6, and after knight f6, you can go d6 as well. And yeah, we're playing this g3 Taimanov, and I went for this line. I don't know exactly who played this one first. This line has been around for a while. So here black trades on d4, goes bishop c5. White plays bishop f4. Now the endgame is not really great for black. I think white just ends up better because it's hard to get d6 or d5 in. So black goes d6 here, queen d2. I played h6 now. This is all kind of well-known theory. If black would like to play e5, because rook ad1 is coming and this pawn is going to be a big target. But if you play e5, then bishop g5 is very annoying, where white just wants to take and plant the knight on d5. So black starts with h6, and then on rook ad1 goes e5, forcing white to play bishop e3. Now black takes on e3, and here white goes fe3. Again, this is actually all pretty well known. I mean, fe3 looks really ugly, but the point is white wants to keep the pressure on d6, and I can't go king e7 here because if rook takes f6 and knight d5. So with fe3, white is actually able to win the d6 pawn. If white had played queen takes e3 here, I think black goes bishop e6, castles, and everything is just a perfect Sicilian. It's like absolutely fine for black. So fe3, bishop e6, queen takes d6. So white does win a pawn here, but black gets some, I would say, pretty nice positional compensation. And there are some games here. I think Caruana beat someone as black. I feel like there was a Carlsen game as well. I think Carlsen might have been white in the game that I'm remembering here. But anyways, I go rook c8, and basically black's idea is that at some point, whether we get the endgame or not, like white's extra pawn here is really hard to use, because black has this very nice pressure against the c-file, and black has good squares for all his pieces, and king e7 is coming, the rook comes out to c8, b5. Everything is just very, very convenient for black. That said, it's not the easiest position. Here Balaji played rook f2, which I think is a pretty smart move, kind of defending c2 from the side, and preparing to possibly jump with the knight at some point, like trading and going knight d5. And at this point I started thinking, because I felt like I had this position in my notes, but I couldn't remember exactly what I looked at here. I did remember that there were some games with this exchange sacrifice. So trading queens, rook takes d6, and then taking on c3. Which looks like a crazy position, because like, okay, black is down in exchange and the pawn. Let's say something like knight d7. So black is down a full exchange here, and the pawn, but tons of strategic compensation, it's actually not that easy for white to break black's defenses here. Like king e7 is coming, rook c8, and so on. I think Magnus had a game here. He ended up winning against Alan Pichot, but in that game, from what I remember looking at, like black had really reasonable chances. So I was kind of thinking about this during the game. I don't know. I wasn't exactly sure if it was like exactly this position that I looked at or something else. And I ended up deciding just to kind of forget about it, just to try to play like the position, let's say normally, just going for compensation. So I go king e7 here, which I think was definitely not great, because it allows white's rook into b6. I think if I could have another chance, I would go knight d7, stopping rook b6, and then black can play king to e7. Or if white goes rook d2 here, for example, I was looking at this after the game, then I think this is actually a much better version of the exchange sack. Something like takes, king e7. Now black has rook c8 coming next move, and white just has like the weakest pawns ever, right? Like c pawn is weak, a pawn is weak, e pawns are weak, light square bishop is like very bad piece. This is actually, I think, a position I would be happy to play, and maybe I think black can even play here for all three results. From a practical point of view, it actually feels much easier. Of course, white doesn't have to go for rook d2, but that would be kind of the idea here. And otherwise, yeah, it's not so easy for white to find a move here. Maybe knight d5. I was looking at like rook c6, for example, offering a rook trade, but going for some tactical complications like this, where white can take this pawn, but then rook a8, and black just gets very active. And from what I looked at, it seems like black is doing all right here. So yeah, after some time, I ended up playing king e7 here, but now rook b6, rook c7. So I defend this pawn. I would like to play knight d7, but I'm not in time because white goes knight d5 check. And I'm forced to take this one. I take with the bishop, which I think is correct, because I'm hoping to use the knight to be able to build some kind of blockade in the future. So takes, rook to d8. And we're still a pawn down, although I didn't think the position is so bad here, because I want to play rook d6, for example. Like, let's say white goes e4, and I'll go rook d6. If white trades, then I actually felt like a position like this, black has tons of compensation for the pawn, because it's very hard for white to kind of get their majority moving. I'm going to go b5, rook c4 here. The e4 pawn is always a target. And b3, then the rook slides into e3. And of course, the king is a lot more active as well. So it's like I have kind of an extra piece on the queen side. So yeah, I thought I'm still doing okay here. White plays this move c4, which I thought was pretty interesting. Now if I take this one, then rook takes b7, and some of my queenside pawns are now falling apart. So this is an endgame that I was actually quite worried about, because if I end up losing this a pawn, white could just have two connected passers on the queen side, and at some point white's bishop is definitely gonna awaken. White will just play some d6 somewhere and open up the bishop, or bishop f1, and it's not gonna be super fun. So I played rook d6, just trying to kind of keep a grip over everything. Rook to b3. And now I end up taking on c4. So the difference here is that now on rook takes b7 check, I can go king e8. Whereas in the previous position, had I taken here, it takes, if I go king e8 here, white can play like rook b6, for example, and I'm not covering this one, and this I felt like was going to be quite unpleasant. I think bishop f1 is also possible, and I definitely didn't like the looks of this. So rook d6, now I take, rook takes, king e8, e4, and this was, I think, a critical moment, because white has just played e4. I can't really take this one because white trades and goes rook takes f7 here, and okay, the 2-rook endgame is just completely lost if your opponent has rooks on the 7th rank, and these rooks are just gonna clean up and mate me soon. So I can't take this one, but I was thinking about this move, rook d7, which definitely was a critical choice here. Because, well, if white trades, then maybe I can take with the knight. I think taking with the king is also possible. Again, I think black has great compensation here. White has to defend the e-pawn, and everything is just super, super active. Very, very hard for white to make progress. But I was mainly concerned about rook b6, white just going after this a pawn. And I did think about taking in this position now that I have the 7th rank under control, and we get some rook endgame like this. Rook takes a6. And I tried to make this work, but I didn't really love the looks of it. So for example, if I take on d5 here, then white has rook a8 check and rook a7. And I'm losing the f pawn, which seemed like kind of a big deal. So at the very least, I'm going to be down a pawn here. And yeah, now white has 2 connected passers. I don't know, maybe black can set up some counterplay with like some rook e2 or rook d2 or something. But yeah, really not easy. So I also thought about something else here. I actually thought about this move, rook d4, which the engine ends up evaluating as just completely equal. And so I think this was really maybe my biggest miss of the game, not going for this. Because I felt like actually this line is quite forcing. After rook d7, other than rook b6, I think it's quite hard for white to keep any chances here. I take on e4. Maybe white goes bishop f1, I'm not sure, but this seemed like the critical line where white gets 2 connected passers. And then this move rook d4, and the point is, okay, I'm going to be able to win this pawn back, the king stays safe, and then yeah, black has their own counterplay, the e-pawn is on the board, it can also give checks and maybe play rook d2 at some point and try to simplify. So compared to the game, I mean, even if black is worse here, actually I feel like this practically is probably a better chance. So I was definitely kind of kicking myself for not going for this one. Because I ended up playing a5. So I'm basically just trying to like hold the position still because I keep the pressure here. And now I'm not letting this pawn get captured with like rook b6 and takes on a6. There's a question about rook c1 check. See, the issue here is that this is not the pair of rooks that I want to trade off, right? Because here it's like white is left with an active rook against my passive rook. Whereas what I'd much rather do is go rook d7 and trade off my passive rook for white's active rook and leave these 2 rooks on the board, right? Where the c rook is much stronger. So that's why I didn't really like rook c1 check here. So a5 is also not right because now white gets to kind of consolidate. So bishop f3. Now I think once again rook d7 was the move here, and yeah, somehow I just kind of rejected this idea, but definitely that was wrong. I go knight d7, king g2, and f6. So I'm trying to like build this like blockade on the dark squares, but it's really kind of weak because white still has like so many ways to infiltrate with both the bishop and the king can also now get in. So the way I play this whole thing I think was very incorrect, and I think white just has a huge advantage now. So king d8, rook a7, e4, bishop h5, and yeah, I'm just not really able to get decent counterplay here. I'm not able to kind of mobilize. Now the g7 pawn is very weak, and yeah, I play knight c5 here, but just bishop g6, just defending this one. Rook d7. Now of course white doesn't trade. King e7. Here white goes rook c8, and black is just under very heavy pressure here, and I'm still down a pawn from earlier, so like down a pawn and worse. I think the engine was actually giving rook g8 in this position. Of course, black would go king d6 and then king h3. I think Stockfish was showing just like a very simple plan of just walking the king into g6 and just taking the g7 pawn. And yeah, actually, black doesn't really have a lot that they can do here to stop this. Like, okay, e4 is weak, but it's defended. b2 is defended. It's like really hard to kind of get anywhere with the knight. And yeah, white is ready to just kind of walk in and win. What my opponent did, I think, was also quite interesting. So he goes rook c8, and I played rook d8 here, just looking to trade rooks. We repeated a couple times. Rook d6, rook c8, rook d8, and now he goes d6 check, which I think one of maybe the only ways to actually keep the game going for white at this point. Because if he trades off the rooks, then again, I think black is doing quite all right here, because my pieces are much more active, and yeah, it's going to be difficult for white to make progress. But he finds d6, which I thought was a nice idea. If I take with the rook here, then rook g8, and I can't defend the g7 pawn. Or excuse me, I have knight e6 here still. Sorry, so rook takes d6. What was the problem here exactly? I'm having a hard time remembering actually at this point. Maybe he can give check first and then play here, and then if knight e6, bishop f7. And just going to be taking this one at some point. Not sure, there's still rook c7 here. Yeah, for whatever reason, I thought there was a serious issue with this one, but yeah, now I'm having a hard time. Oh, right. Maybe this way here, knight e6, and then bishop f5, actually, much better. So threatening to take immediately and also threatening to take and then take. And yeah, kingside is collapsing. No, guys, I'm sorry. I got this completely wrong. Rook takes d6 was played. King takes d6, of course, not possible because the rook is hanging. And then king d7, I think, also not good because of bishop f5 check. So rook d6 is forced. If white goes for this one, then I think I'm just in time here. Yeah, maybe rook d4. Maybe I can just push this one. And okay, it's not great. I think white is better here, but at least, yeah, we're not like immediately losing. So he actually played b4 in this position, which I did not see. I don't think I expected this move at all. But it's a very nice resource because rook is hanging and knight on c5 is hanging. If I take, of course, the knight is lost. And after en passant, ab3, of course, I can't take because the rook is hanging as well. So I do have rook c1. So I'm not like losing the piece. But now b4. I'm forced to play either knight d3 or knight b3 here. I ended up going knight d3 to hit the pawn. And yeah, now he could trade and play this endgame. But then, like, I'm going to stop the b pawn. It's actually not going to be that easy for white to win this one. And instead he goes rook e8 check, shifts the king over, and now rook g8. So he's giving up the b pawn, but he's winning the g7 pawn, which of course means I'm probably going to lose the h6 pawn as well. So we transition into this endgame. Takes, king d8, rook h7. And now it starts to again look extremely difficult for black because I'm losing the h pawn, it seems like, and then white's h pawn starts running. Bishop is going to be super strong on f5, and it just feels like black is not really folding. Now I did find the best chance. I go rook c2 here, so trading off this rook, so my other rook can hopefully get in. Takes. He goes rook takes h6 here. Rook d2 check, king f3. And this is maybe the second moment where I really kind of failed to find the right approach here. I'll be honest, during the game I felt like it was lost at this point. I didn't actually think I was going to be able to really survive here. But actually after rook d3 check, it's still not that simple for white. Because if he plays king g4, for example, then knight e3 check, and the king actually isn't really getting in so easily. And then king h5, there's knight f1, and black is actually winning a pawn. Because on king g4, well, we can repeat the position like this. And then if king h3, then black is playing rook d2 here, and then knight f1 next move, and actually it's very hard. White just doesn't hold on to the h pawn. So it's actually very easy for black to all of a sudden get enough counterplay here. I think in the game, I don't know, I think I just discarded this because I thought I didn't actually see this like knight e3, knight f1 idea, or at least it didn't look like it would be working. I think I probably also thought, okay, king e2, and then what am I doing from there? Because rook e3 check king d2, we're losing the piece. But here it's kind of nice that white's king is cut off. Now black can go like rook a3. And here actually it's a lot harder for white to make progress because knight comes to d4 and my rook and knight are super active, putting pressure on g3, so it's hard to push the h-pawn. And my king can at least kind of help and defend somewhat. So this actually is much harder for white to win compared to when the king is like on g4, f5, then it's just totally over. So I didn't have that much time here. I feel like I had maybe 10 minutes or so, but it was still enough time to at least put up more resistance. Because I end up going knight d4 check, then king g4, and it's just nothing here. Like the knight looks pretty, but now white is just advancing very easily, h4, h5, and there's no real counterplay for black. So the game ended very quickly. Rook h7, h4, king g8, rook f7, rook f2, h5, and I resign here because actually it's just losing because pawn is running to h6, h7, rook f8 check, and just promoting. And there's nothing really black can do. Any kind of knight e6, there's always going to be h6 and rook e7. The knight is just going to be short on squares and eventually lost. So yeah, it's just immediately losing endgame. So that was kind of a bummer. Like I thought about this one, I didn't really see the follow-up, but I could have spent a lot more time on it. It's really not the hardest thing to figure out. Knight e3, knight f1, going after the pawns. Now white can still keep some play here. I think after king h5, knight f1. Let's say white can improve the rook first, something like this. Say king goes back to d8, play king g4 here. Now at least the rook is in a better position. And then if knight e3, I think white can actually do something. White has more options here because they're going to be able to play like rook f7. So, for example, this one, and then if rook d2 here, rook f7, and black's not in time because, okay, maybe black can win one pawn, but losing f6, and that's going to be really, really bad from there. But instead of knight e3, I think the engine was showing this move, rook a3, which, okay, this one not so easy to find, but basically just keeping the pressure on here and not letting white push h4. Still not, definitely far from like drawn at this point. I think white still has very, very good chances here, but at least this would have been much, much better resistance than what I did, which just was losing immediately. So kind of a tough one. And like I mentioned, ended up just resigning a couple moves later. So yeah, two moments here. Like, of course, I could have known the opening a little bit deeper and been more comfortable there. Because I kind of like, knew about this line, had to remember a lot of stuff over the board, and was not super confident in the endgame. But then a couple moments. First of all, this one, this rook d7 idea, just trying to trade off the active rook, and then going for this rook endgame where, okay, I would have to find this accurate move, which I did consider during the game, and yeah, maybe I can hold this one from here. And then at the very least, this moment, with rook d3, it's just really a concrete thing both times, but yeah, I feel like it really could have maybe put more effort into trying to hold this one, because afterwards it felt like I just went down and could have put up a lot better resistance.